What do you get when a London-raised American South African and a New York-raised Moroccan meet on the interwebs and become instant soul sisters? One of them, an Ayurvedic practitioner and transformation coach, and the other, a Conspire breathwork coach and Reiki master teacher. Both obsessed with wellness, family, entrepreneurship, relationships, and the magic of human expansion and growth. You get a whole convo. We truly believe that with an open heart, focused mind, and energy receptive to the possibilities, your wellness journey can guide you to a life that exceeds your wildest dreams. Welcome to our podcast. We're Ella and Ymane, and we are so happy you're here. Come vibe with us as we explore the wholeness of being through the lens of wellness. Welcome to a whole convo with Ella and Ymane. Ymane, how you doing?
Welcome, everyone. I am doing fantastic.
I love
Feeling
to hear it.
witchy.
Oh, so you've given it away. What our episode is today
They'll
is
see it in the title, babes.
oh, they will, but like if you're watching it, you might not just check that out. You might just be like, who are these foxy ladies? Let's see what they're talking about. So our episode today is you are a witch and you don't even know it.
Oh, that is so juicy. I want to hear all the things.
So do you know where my mind was with this one, right?
Please tell us.
It's all about the power of our language.
Ooh.
Now, when we think about witches, we all have this like idea where they have pointy hats and they have like long nails and they're over their cauldrons and doing all these things. But what are they doing? They are incantating words. And with their words, they are casting spells,
Ooh.
using words to create magic, bring magic into existence.
I freaking love that girl.
Yeah, so
Little poet, you.
oh, and so we too possess this ability to cast spells with the words we speak, but we don't realize it.
Yeah.
We don't realize this. And there's a lot of vilification of witches with the witch hunts. That's a whole convo in
Yeah, that's a
itself.
whole other conversation.
And so sometimes like the idea of being a witch may not be something that's quite that attractive unless we're going to be like a witch on Halloween getting dressed up. I know that's your favorite holiday. Um,
Sure is.
but just this idea that we have so much power with our communication, not just the words that we think, but sorry, the words that we speak, but the words that we think and the
Mm.
tapes that we constantly play over and over and over in our minds. They all carry energy, and this energy goes into the world, goes into the ether, and draws back, creates, has the power to uplift, has the power to like suppress or
Yeah.
bring down and depress our experience. How do you feel about being a witch, Ymane?
100%. First of all, I love the way you opened this up because I do think that there's so much power in our words, not only verbally, but the ones we think mentally, the ones we think about, the ones that we allow to, loop around our minds. And I think that for me, I feel very strongly about this like whole you're a witch, but you don't even know it because I think as a little kid, both my sister and I, we were very witchy and we loved
What
my
do you
sister,
mean very witchy?
like my sister, used to have little spell books and, I got her the Ouija board, for her birthday, where you like put
I do. That's
that
an interesting present, Iman.
and yeah, because we were so fascinated by the possibility, right? We talk about possibilities. It wasn't like we lived by it, it was our truth, this is it. But it's like, is it possible that we can be magic, that we can create things that other people don't think they can? Can we write things in our notebooks? It was just, and
What age were you? I'm just curious.
12, 13. I know we were so cute. And
Baby
my,
Iman and
I
us
feel like my
here.
sister was such an inspiration to me in realizing that kind of like power and just coming from a very tribal background being Rifian women, being women of, Amazigh culture, the tribal indigenous people of Morocco, North Africa. It's in our roots, that proclamation of words from a woman, the power we can create, I think is valid. So to answer your question, I think very highly of that concept. I don't do any spells right now, and I'm not very like
Oh,
witchy.
but you do, Ymane. You
For sure, I
do.
know, which is what this conversation is about. But I think as a little kid, it was more like a fascination and an appreciation for the possibility of what can be created in this life.
Mm,
Magic always, always fascinated me. And I do believe, absolutely, you're right to take that back. I am the kind of woman that creates magic every day with my words, with
absolutely.
my thoughts. It's very hard to not believe it and not see it when you've been given so much proof. Like I have so many receipts. I have too much proof and way too much validation of the power of words and our thoughts that I can be like, I don't know about that. It's, I can't unsee it. I can't unbelieve it.
That makes me so happy because it's because I think the important thing to underline about it is the whether you know it or not. So you're speaking from the perspective of I am consciously and I have deliberately worked with my words in my thoughts and spoken things into existence. And we're doing this whether we realize it or not.
Yeah,
Whether,
100%.
so and this is what makes it so juicy for me is that it gives us a personal power and a personal responsibility that we can then use more actively when we bring that awareness and when we
Mm,
claim that power, as opposed to carelessly using words, carelessly using thoughts, carelessly allowing the repetition of those words and the repetition of those thoughts to keep recreating the same things. And I think that
yes.
that's where like the real yummy, it's so juicy.
Wow, that was a very nice slurpy sound.
It's because it's that
It is
juice.
very juicy.
It is so much so. And I feel like you talking about the tribal aspect, I love that reminder of the image of this being something that is maybe more so associated with females, with women, because language is very much an expression through language is something that usually, and I'm just talking in a generalization here, it's not an absolute thing at all, but usually is something that women are more, what's the word I'm looking, have more fluency with,
Mm.
because we're connected in with our emotion and we use words to create connections with other people. I can't remember where I read this somewhere, but men, and I'm making up the figures. For example, on the whole, men generally have about 15,000 words that they will use a day. Women have up to 80,000 words that they will use a day. And I'm totally making up the figures. I can't remember what they are. But the
Right.
comparison is it's a lot more for women. So men, like if you're having interaction with men at work, wherever it is that you're having these conversations, will tend to be shorter in their interactions. They will tend to be more efficient with their use of language. Whereas women, because it's such a rich experience for them to use words and to have that opportunity to connect, will be a lot more verbose and have a lot more to say. So,
Mm. That's
and
such an interesting thing. It's so interesting. I would probably say that made sense for me before I met my husband.
oh, he's the
It's so fun.
unicorn.
He is a unicorn because that's actually how I fell in love with him. Is his language and his magic in verbal, love making, verbal love making and his
Love
mind.
it.
And I think I literally, that's what I said to him. I said, I'm in love with your mind. And we would talk for hours and hours and break night just speaking and so it makes sense because that is a very powerful aspect for me, as an individual. Like I love the power of words. I love the energy that certain words come with.
Mm.
And you know what's so funny? It's been an active process for me because even though I mentioned that little fun tidbit about when I was a little kid, my sister and I would have our little spell books, then there was like a big break and not even realizing what words mean, how powerful they are. And then in like maybe the last 10, 15 years, I took an active, conscious, participatory role in my life of aligning with the kind of language I want to use, doing the work to understand. Because there were several years in my life where words were actually very disempowering. They did
Mm.
me because I wasn't using them in an empowering way. I didn't,
Mm.
I would, I'd rather say I forgot, right? Because as a little kid, I knew. And maybe that's why sometimes it's like going back to the childlike behavior, that
Absolutely.
imagination, that belief is so important as an adult because we oftentimes forget the power.
Yeah.
The little kid I had it, and then there was a time in my life that it disappeared, and then in my later adult life in the past few years, it's been something that I am very conscious and aware that I need to partake in.
Mm. Yeah, and it is interesting because we can have so many different relationships with words depending on our experience. So, when you're talking about, I just love that idea, that image. I can just see the two of you like little girls, just running around doing all the things. Sounds darling. And my experience has always been fascination with words in
Mm,
terms of, like when people think about themselves as being artistic, I never imagined myself as being artistic because I had this belief that you know what I mean,
artistry.
being artistic, being creative was limited to like physical art, whether you
Yeah,
could
most
paint,
people do
whether
think
you
that.
could draw, sculpting, whatever, that physical creation of
Painting,
art. Yeah. And then, but I've always I feel like words, I see them, to me, the images they create, the way that they can dance, the sound, the tone, the
yeah.
combination of words, and I have claimed that as an artistry, as a creativity.
You better, girl, you
Yeah,
better claim that as an
yeah,
artist.
yes.
You
And
are.
it's that's been an unfolding for me to claim that aspect. And yet I've always understood the the potent nature of words. And my perspective, particularly, has been the painful words, the words of judgment, the words that have diminished me, that I have received from other people. And that's
Mm,
been growing up in my life in significant relationships, some of them like close familial relationships, some of them just people like authority figures passing through my life. And the words that they have, the spells they have cast with their words that have landed on me and altered
mm.
how I perceived myself,
That's
how
deep.
I dared to behave. And they began to form some of the tapes that would play on repetition in the background, not at the
Yep.
forefront of my mind. But if things went wrong, they would be drawn forward. And those words in those particular expressions would then come to life again. And this is how powerfully our communication can land with and affect so many different aspects of our experience. Did you ever hear this
100%.
did you ever hear this like saying when you were younger, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me? And I don't believe that at all.
BS.
Yeah,
Bullshit. Are you
that's a
kidding me?
technical term, right?
It is very technical, very accurate. That is total BS. But
Yeah,
you see how they've trained us,
exactly.
trained us to think that.
Exactly. It trained us to believe that the words that are carelessly thrown away don't matter. And yet we know that a lot of the judgments we have of ourselves and the way that we're hard on ourselves are not even our own words.
Yeah.
There have been words that have been thrown like missiles carelessly towards us. And that for me has been a really important part of me being very careful with my language.
Yeah,
It's
same.
been it's been harder towards myself,
but being careful with my language when I try to express myself with other people, because I know if I say it in a way that doesn't actually accurately represent what I feel, I can't take it back. It's out there.
Yeah. No, it's really crazy. I think that, and first of all, I think it's always a little bit harder to do it like for ourselves, on ourselves, anything that, we're a little bit more mindful with others just because of our conditioning, like how we're supposed to be like, good girls, right? Like
Hmm.
don't be bad. That's like being, and when you're raised in a way where you're taught, kindness and respect and manners, it's a lot easier to basically reflect that on others because I know my sister and I for sure we were raised that way and we're very respectful and we say thank you a million times to people and please and we were raised in that way, but it doesn't mean like we're always, like that
Yeah.
to ourselves. And I think that is something that is a conscious decision we must take as adults is to really realize the power of words that we, not only think about in our own mind and what we say ourselves, but yeah, to redefine what has been said to us and that
Mm.
put those spells on us, like you using your language, which I love, those spells on us. How can we undo the spell? How can we undo the spell? Let's
And
talk about
how can we undo the spells?
yeah.
It's this is the power of incantation. This is the power of repetition. This is the power of mantra. This is the power of
I was
having,
literally just gonna say mantras. Yeah.
yeah, and people might mantra affirmation, they're on a
Yeah.
similar path.
And
Having that choice about the words that help us to feel powerful and having that choice, and again that internal reference. So what does that feel like to me? So for example, I might say to you, okay, Iman, is really not helpful. And I know this because I say this to my clients. Can you check your words, please? I'm going to stop you here and I'm going to ask you to listen to what you said and feel into something that actually feels more accurate and more empowering for you, something that helps you feel more expanded. Because I could offer you a mantra, I could offer you an affirmation, but if there's something that's not quite right in those words, that
right.
doesn't quite activate you. And it could be where you are on your journey. It could be that particular words carry more power for you than other words. It could just be the phrasing because you could move one word slightly to the left or take one word out and it
It
completely
changes everything.
transforms. Exactly. So it's about reclaiming our connection to the way that we speak and the words that we speak and the thoughts that we think on repetition and catching ourselves out. We mentioned this a couple of episodes back, the power of awareness, because mostly we will say life happens to us, and if we're not thinking about them, sorry, let me backtrack. Life happens to us, experiences unfold, and we'll say, I don't know why that happened because we're not actually present and aware with things leading up to that experience or things leading up to that action that we take. So that
Right.
invitation to be more present and be more aware of what it is. What is it I'm thinking? What is it that I'm constantly saying to myself about this situation?
That's huge.
And actually catching ourselves in the act. And from there, again, it's not about making ourselves wrong. It's not about punishing ourselves. One of my favorite things that I say to clients is, thank you for showing me that. So
Yeah.
if I have a,
Love that.
a judgment about myself, I think I'm stupid, I can't do things, I'm I'm incapable. When I am aware that those are the words that I'm thinking, I can say to myself, thank you for showing me that. Because it's an invitation for me then to say, and what do I choose that helps me move forward? What do I choose that helps me feel more expanded? What do I choose that lifts me up as opposed to bringing me down?
Yeah, and that I think that's such a underrated, like it's so underrated to catch ourselves in the act, as you said it. It's like we're so used to being so robotic and busy and so in the busyness of life that
Mm.
we're not actually taking that observer state, which is so important in life. Being the observer, really understanding, wow, I'm actually the one saying those things.
To me.
It is I, it is I that is saying those words.
What's
And
going
not only,
on?
yeah, and not only is it I saying those words, oh my goodness, I say them every single day,
So many times a day.
multiple times a day.
Yes.
And that one realization, that one kind of observer setting to actually really take genuine stock of what's happening and being present. And then, like you said, not punishing and not blaming, choosing another way of communicating
Mm.
with ourselves.
Absolutely. And there's something juicy in that act of catching ourselves as well, because when we can pinpoint the actual spell that we are casting on repeat, it's then we can start looking at the ramifications of that actually into our lives.
Oh,
It's
exactly.
it's nice to be able
It's
to.
a cheat code.
It
Think
is.
about it.
It is, because then it's like these things aren't just happening. There is something that I can influence and I can shift to then see the potential that awaits me with this decision.
Girl. Okay. That is deep. Talk about power and cultivating the kind of result and life that we want,
Absolutely.
taking responsibility and believing in the power and magic that we do have with these words.
Back to that magic, back to our ability to cast spells with them.
Girl, let's cast some spells. Let's cast some spells today.
And
Life is ours to co-create with the universe. And it makes me feel so excited and so grounded that we have the power to do so.
absolutely. And it doesn't have to
Woo!
be complicated. It does.
No,
I think this is one of the important things to
that's a good
underline
point.
about this.
Yeah,
It doesn't
tell
have
me
to
more.
be complicated. I think there's a quite an uptick in this idea of manifesting, and we're doing all of the things. That's a whole convo.
Totally. That's a whole
That's a
lot.
whole convo.
Um,
And yet it can feel complicated, or it can feel like I have to go through these convoluted steps, and when the moon's at that angle, and all these things, and yet we have this power of magic to cast our spells at any
at
given
any
moment.
moment.
At any given moment.
And the simplicity of it starting with words.
Hmm.
That's how simple. We should have a little exercise and or journal prompt
I think we'll
and a
put that
little
on the show
spell.
notes, shall
That's
we?
what I mean.
Yeah,
I think
let's do that.
that.
Let's do that. And I just wanted to add something onto this, as we've spoken about it as a very internal experience and how it affects our lives. And I feel that once we start to take a deeper understanding of that and what that can look like in our lives, it also has a powerful effect. We've mentioned quite a few
Yeah,
episodes, the ripple effect,
the ripple effect on the outside
and the
world.
ripple effect it has on our outside world, and particularly for the younger people that we come into contact with, whether they are our children directly or younger people are that we have in our lives, that our presence has an impact on. Being able to model this
Hmm.
care with words, this intention with words, this aspirational expression through our words, being able to model that for young people is so, so important, to give them another perspective, to give them, whether it's we're speaking about it directly or just being that force for deliberate communication. And
I
that's a whole convo, but I just wanted to throw that in.
I love that you threw that in. That's so important because that's our future. That's the future. And there's nothing more impactful and more resonant to the youth than modeling that behavior, modeling that reality so that it actually is the truth for them. So
Absolutely.
I love that you mentioned that. This was amazing.
Look at those spells we have been casting, girl.
I love it. And I hope that our listeners continue to do so as well for themselves and for others. And it's just so beautiful to share this. So, do you want to close us out, Ella? Do you want to say anything else before we wrap it up here?
I feel complete, darling.
Feel so complete. Thank you so much, everyone. This is A Whole Convo with Ella and Ymane, and we can't wait to talk to you next time. Bye.
Until next time.
That is a wrap on this week's convo. We had a blast talking to you.
Thank you for sharing your time, hearts, and minds with us.
We hope this episode left you thinking, feeling, and maybe even breathing a little deeper. If it moved something in you, please share it, text it to a friend, or just sit with it.
Remember, the power of change can start with the simplest convo.
And if you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to share with us, please feel free to do so. We'd love to connect with you. Don't forget to subscribe to our show so you never miss a moment of the magic. And if you're curious about any of our services and offerings, check out the show notes for all the links and goodies. We're so grateful you're on this journey with us. Until next time,
Stay rooted, stay whole.